Who's never heard of This War of Mine? Real gem from 2014, big break for the Polish studio 11-bit studio. This War of Mine left a mark on players' hearts with a distinctive approach. Shows the horrors of war from the civilian point of view. Like a lot of people, I was caught up in the hype that took place back then. For my part, I was still young, and getting a hold of the game wasn't the easiest. But you found ways. Once settled in, you start the first game. You do some actions. You feel a bit lost and alone. The game feels rather dark and disturbing, especially the first time playing. No tutorial, no introduction. You're left suffering in the horrors of the war with characters in more or less precarious conditions. Racking your brain to know if you should prioritize making a radio or upgrading the workshop. Wondering if feeding your survivors every 2 or 3 days is more optimal. I didn't realize it at first, but the game is actually pretty hard. You make mistakes, you get sick, you're depressed, you don't manage hunger well because you didn't optimize the rainwater collector system. As a result, you quickly end up frustrated. After a few failed attempts, you finally develop a micro-strategy to survive longer. As for food, it's better to leave them hungry. But not too much. Once they're very hungry, you need to feed them if you don't want to reach a critical state. A bed for 2 survivors is a good ratio. But soon enough, with cases of disease or injury, you end up having to be fancy and make an extra bed to allow healing and optimal rest in the shelter. But despite a carefully thought out optimization, I always end up having problems. Like here, I don't have enough food, so I decide to steal some discreetly. And bam! I get caught and killed after just a few seconds. Another time, one of my survivors smoked like a chimney. He finished all the cigarettes in the shelter. Too bad, since I plan to sell the stock for food and avoid everyone dying of hunger. And well, at this point, 15-year-old me is frustrated and decides to quit. After all, what's the point of a game when you're dying again and again in a way that's so annoying? I really don't get how people can enjoy this game. What's so good about it? Narration, game systems, the challenge? After all these questions, I decided to search online for posts of the complainants who are annoyed and outraged by this excessive difficulty, hoping to find some kind of comfort in them. What? Like you never done that before. However, what's important was this one post that I found, which changed my opinion about the game forever. Unfortunately, 7 years later, I tried to find it again to no avail. It's just lost in the vast ocean of the internet. But it's okay. Than words, this critic gave me a feeling, a way of seeing and apprehending the game that 15-year-old me wasn't capable of doing by herself. Someone who, like me, ran into a brick wall in the game. This person gave their all, did their best to optimize their survival, and, like so many others, just dies stupidly, probably from a bullet or one read too much, some missing fuel for a winter that's too cold. And that's when that special feeling appeared. The game is unfair, arbitrary. You give your heart and soul, and all you get is suffering. You fight a little too much to survive, and it's death that awaits. Hold up. Let's just take a second to think about it. Why is This War of Mine so hard? It's because This War of Mine is more than just a game. It's a testimony. If we stop for a moment and try to reflect on what the game is trying to make me experience as a player. What happened to my survivors is more or less what's happening today in Ukraine, yesterday in Yugoslavia, or Germany, for European examples. This game shows you what's real and revolting. people die for nothing in total indifference. In their shelter, they bury their past and their stories. And our bitterness won't change anything, because war leaves behind a fading memory through the mortality of its victims. It's a brutal ending. After this revelation, this feeling stayed with me every time I played it. I still play the game from time to time. Of course, having more experience, a better strategy, I even succeed reaching a ceasefire day. What a lot of people have against the game is its repetitivity, and it's true that once you understand how it works, the days become a routine. We let our survivors sleep, sometimes it's long. Way too long. Especially when you have only one survivor available. We use what we found at night to upgrade or construct elements that are necessary to our survival. We try making alcohol as much as we can, because alcohol always sells. We try the best we can to deal with hunger, sickness, or depression. Every night, you send a collector, and eventually, you discover tricks to bring back more resources. Like this trader, for example. He buys from you medicine and bandages. For very expensive, because his father is dying. Soon enough, you discover that if you take this path, go down here, and slip out the back, you can loot discreetly, without any danger or repercussion. Now you have a regular replenishment of useful merchandise. In fact, the more you play, the more you see that the game is not so hard after the 10th or 15th nights. Once you settle with more or less acceptable tricks, you can get by rather smoothly in the game. It's crazy that a game that seems so hard at the beginning can seem so easy at the end. If we analyze this War of Mine from a mechanical point of view, the progression curve isn't very well managed. Moreover, the random elements aren't marked enough, which gives a strong feeling of repetitiveness. As for discovering things, you mostly do that in the beginning, surely because the game is, in a certain way, meant to be played as a die and retry. The problems come after a few hours of the game. When you start getting used to it, the enjoyment is gone, because there is no challenge anymore. And you're seeing all the elements again and again, so the essence of the game fades. As if the scale between simulation and game is struggling to balance. Despite that, I don't know for you, but I forgive it. All of these little game design inconsistencies remain just errors on the course of a masterpiece that already fulfilled its duty for players. That's also why, to start up this series, I thought to myself, what's better than to start with this War of Mine? A lot of people still criticize video game by downgrading it to mere entertainment. But video game is an art that mainly through its gameplay, but also its narration, music and visuals, transmit messages. Art. It's the singular or plural visions of authors about the world. What more is there to say? This War of Mine has taken one of the most tackled themes in video games, war, and put it in the civilian's point of view. I can conclude on the music that marks the spirit through its ambience, its narration that, though not always well translated, take us into the depths of its tormented survivors, or its gameplay that perfectly matches with its themes to offer a powerful simulation. No. I'm gonna end this video like a run of this War of Mine with a feeling of frustration and incomprehension. Something brutal.